We're joined now by Wrong Speak Publishing founder Adam Coleman. Great to have you here on Outsiders, Adam. Got the book behind you, Black Victim, Black Victor, and let's talk about Joe Biden, where he sits in that Black Victim or Black Victor pantheon. Obviously the news has been pretty consistent this week that black men in particular are supporting Donald Trump, but is Biden seriously losing the black vote?
Yes, I think he's losing the black vote for the same reasons as that gentleman in that clip was stating. It's mostly economic reasons. We have less buying power, and whoever's in power, we're going to blame. So Joe Biden's in power. He's held responsible for our economic distress. So I think that is the number one reason. I do think immigration is becoming a major issue for all Americans, especially Black Americans, because over 60% of Black Americans live within these urban city areas. And that's where all these people are going, especially in Democrat cities in the North, like Chicago and New York City. And so you're starting to see resources taken away from the people within these cities and basically brought over to support these particular people who aren't even supposed to be here. And it's even worse because Joe Biden has not controlled the border, and he's held responsible for it. And then on top of that, Joe Biden doesn't want to provide any sort of resources for the cities to support the distress of the cities. So I think all types of people, including Black Americans within these cities, are blaming Joe Biden for this.
Rita.
But yes, Trump is almost doubling what the Democrats, what the Republican nominee typically would get from that black demographic, but it's still 80%. What are the main reasons that the African American vote is so strongly behind the Democrats, even if it's fracturing a little bit at the moment?
I think the biggest issue is that it is cultural. Like I said before, most Black Americans, over 60% of Black Americans live within or in the surrounding Democrat-controlled cities. So in these cities, they're not being, there's not much competition for their vote coming from the Republican Party. And I say this from experience, many Black Americans don't even know Republicans. Their idea of what a Republican is basically what they see on television. And that's not the best way to gauge what a political party supports by listening to a left-wing media apparatus that gives you some sort of filtering of what the Republicans want. So honestly, I think local elections are extremely important. The problem is that, and I understand it from a fiscal standpoint, but the problem is that Republicans for decades, like you said, generations, have not shown up in many of these cities. Chicago, for example, hasn't had a Republican mayor since the early 1900s. New Orleans hasn't had a Republican mayor since the 1800s.
Two of the most crime-riddled cities in America. In fact, I think they're 1 and 2.
But Adam, I want to ask you though, let's move beyond the general sort of broad, political ballot box sort of part to the way the racial tensions are still being exploited in other areas. And there was a fascinating case this week where a Facebook executive was sentenced to 5 years in prison for, this scam. And they were a DEI, diversity executive, and they had a scam. They were ripping people off. They ripped the companies off, $5 million, going to jail. But they used the shield of DEI and racism to avoid criticism and prosecution. And I mean, that just sums up to me the way that these sorts of efforts, which are really about dividing people, are then used as cover for all sorts of other things. What do you think, Adam?
No, you're exactly right. In my piece for the New York Post, I highlight how basically DEI is a sham. It's run by a sham ideology. You can't prove if DEI is working. How do you show the cost-benefit analysis of DEI? You can't. But at the end of the day, DEI wants more money. They want more money to support the industry in itself. They want more trainings. They want more meetings, more paperwork to show what at the end? Nothing. But everybody gets paid, right? All the consultants get paid. And someone like this woman, Smiles, who got prosecuted, and thankfully there was some sort of justice that was brought to this. She's basically facing 5 years for being a con artist. And the reason she was able to get away with it is because you don't question DEI within corporate America. Why is the budget of DEI offices 2 times the budget of offices that actually make money within corporations? You're not supposed to ask these questions. And so I think that's the general weakness that you're seeing within corporate America.
Adam, I wanted to ask you about Donald Trump, the various trials that he's going on. He made comments earlier in the week which has sent many on the sort of usual suspects at CNN and elsewhere absolutely berserk, where he said that many black Americans identified, I'm paraphrasing Donald Trump obviously, but he was saying many black Americans identified with him because they'd been persecuted in the same way that he was being persecuted by a flawed justice system. The left have gone crazy, called him a racist, etc., etc. But do you think there's any legitimacy in that argument of his?
I think there might be some who carry this viewpoint that the justice system is overwhelmingly against Black Americans when facing justice, and maybe there is some sort of persecution against them. Whether that's the case or not, that can be debated. But I'll say this, I use the measuring stick of what does my mother think? Because my mother's not political. She doesn't pay attention to everything that's going on. And unprovoked, my mother asked me, why are they going after Donald Trump? This doesn't make any sense. And so to me, Black woman who's sitting here, I don't even think she voted for him. And she even says, this doesn't seem right. Why are they going after him? I think that says a lot. I think a lot of people are saying, when you're going after Donald Trump for hush money, where he's likely not going to get any sort of jail time or any severe punishment, right? They're just trying to drag him through the mud and make him spend a whole bunch of money on lawyer fees. I mean, to me, this seems politically motivated. Anybody who's not partisan can see that it's politically motivated, whether you like him or not. And I'm hearing story after story from random people who are saying the same thing as my mother, that this seems highly politically motivated. It seems very obvious as to what's going on, and they don't like it.
Adam, I think we should always listen to our mothers, and I love the idea of the Mrs. Coleman metric. I think we should get Mrs. Coleman on at some point to talk about this very thing. But absolutely, we want to hear from her point of view because she's spot on there. Adam Coleman, thanks so much, and say g'day to Australia to your mum. Okay, mate.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.